I said, the pain got me bad, nigga, I was wide awake. Get out your ass, that's what your mama said. Yeah.
Hey yo, we're back. 2023 most favorite albums. I know I'm a bit late here, but here we are. This was supposed to happen halfway through the year, but oh well. Anyways, let's begin because we have a lot to get through. I'm gonna go through alphabetical order for now, and at the end of the year I'll do the proper list. As always, 3D Country. This is an indie rock / art punk album by Geese. It's super energetic and dense, and also provides lots of progressive experiences as well. Next up we got 93696 by Liturgy. And this is one behemoth of an album, definitely at the top or near the top of one of my most favorites. It's a progressive metal / black metal or avant-garde album, and I think this offers one of the strongest track lists from them yet. Super aggressive, noisy, and also probably one of the wildest albums they've released. Next up we got DDS, aka Death's Dynamic Shroud, with After Angel, which is a follow-up album to their 2022 album Dark Life, which actually made it into my top 20 at the end of the year. But yeah, After Angel explores a lot of the similar themes, both musically and conceptually. It's a really nice glitch pop / electro pop and vaporwave album with post-industrial elements laced in, just like Dark Life. Next up we got After the Magic by Parannoul, and this is a very highly anticipated album, a follow-up album to the very stunning album that released in 2021, which also made it near the top of my list at the end of the year, which was To See the Next Part of the Dream. After the Magic is a shoegaze / indie rock album with huge progressive elements and super dense walls of noise. It enters post-rock territory as well. After the Magic takes everything from To the Next Part of the Dream and cranks it up to 10. This is one of the most stunning and beautiful albums I've ever heard in a while, but it's also extremely depressive as well. I mean, the contents and the lyrics and the concepts in here pretty similar to the previous album, but it's not as dark as the previous one. There's a much more uplifting sound here and an overall uplifting theme of chasing dreams, but the execution is so much better. I mean, just the instrumentation, the walls of sound is just stunning and absolutely mind-blowing at moments. This will definitely be near the top at the end of the year for my list. Parannoul also released a live album this year, and that is also just absolutely stunning as well. One of the best live albums I've heard in a long time, and he's been making collabs in the underground as well, so yeah, keep an eye out on Parannoul. Just lots of exciting stuff here. Next up we got Beloved Paradise Jazz by McKinley Dixon, following up the really great album he dropped in 2021, which I listened later in 2022. But in 2021 is when it released, and that album is fantastic. Now this new album is a jazz rap and conscious hip hop album with some neo soul tied in there as well, and I think the execution is just on another level here. The instrumentation is on another level, the writing is on another level, the energy is on another level. He managed to outdo himself, providing just endless amounts of charisma and a tight and very punchy track list, whether that be instrumentally or just straight up conceptually. I do see this being in my top 10 at the end of the year. We will see. Next up we got Call Me If You Get Lost, the Estate Sale. Specifically, Call Me If You Get Lost did make it near the top at my 2021 list. It is a great album from Tyler. And this is a deluxe version follow-up to that album, and it dropped some great tracks here, and honestly one of Tyler's best tracks in a while with the closer of the Estate Sale. If you didn't know already, this is a hardcore hip-hop / jazz rap album. I mean, there's not much else to say. The Estate Sale is great, and there are some real nice standout tracks on there. Sorry Not Sorry is one of my favorite Tyler tracks ever, and we'll see what he follows this up with. Next up we got Compilation 3 by Sadness, an artist I haven't covered yet on this channel yet, I don't think, but I have listened to a couple of the previous albums in the discography, just haven't been a part of my most favorite of the year. This project, however, might stand a chance here. It's a shoegaze slash black gaze album, and it is super dense, super heavy. It's not perfect. It does provide some dull moments or some numbing moments that sound kind of the same, but it's still a pretty good project. Next up we got Lana Del Ray's album, Did You Know That There's a Tunnel Under Ocean Boulevard. It's a baroque pop slash art pop album, and I think it does have some of her best writing yet on this album. The production is luscious and atmospheric with plenty ballads. My only one small complaint is this album could be just a bit shorter. There definitely is some filler, but regardless, it's still a great album. Oh man, next up we got Model Actress with Dog's Body. This is a noise rock slash industrial rock album with a very dance punk undertone. It is extremely relentless. It almost gives you no space to breathe. The writing on here is also incredibly dark and super violent as well. The production and the instrumentation and the guitar tones on here are hellish and manic. It's pretty much a Daughters album, but LCD sound system mixed in, and that is one hell of a combo on paper, and in practice it is also one hell of a combo. It's one of the best debut albums I've heard in a long time, and it's also one of the most disturbing as well. It is just straight anxiety inducing noises and super passionate and violent performances as well. This is for sure tied as my favorite album almost. It's up there. It's either one or two, and I also think it is one of the best albums of the year so far. Next up we got El Michael Affair and Black Thought with their collaboration project Glorious Game. Coming off of Cheat Codes in 2022, Black Thought has been on an insane run, and this man is 51 years old and he's still considered one of the GOATs. Now Glorious Game is of course a conscious hip-hop album, but we get live instrumentation here and it is really great to hear. And as always, Black Thought's pen game is on top as well here. It's not Cheat Codes level here, but it's still insane. But I mean, I can't even complain. 51 years old doing this. I mean, Cheat Codes was in my top 5 for 2022, and Glorious Game is a great project here as well. Next up we got Group Therapy with I Was Mature for My Age, but I Was Still a Child. This is basically a Brockhampton album. No, but it's a pop rap slash experimental hip hop album with some R&B, some trap, and more in there as well. You can tell there was a large influence from Brockhampton's Saturation series, but it's not derivative in any way. It is fantastic. Brockhampton may be gone, but Group Therapy is here. Next up we got Shushu with Ignore Grief. This is a death industrial album, and it's probably one of the most disturbing albums they've dropped, next to Girl with a Basket of Fruit. The anxiety-inducing spoken word performance comes back here, and it's also super ambient as well compared to Girl with Basket of Fruit. I think the execution does lack here a bit compared to that album as well, but I can see what they were going for here. Just an incredibly dark and disturbing soundtrack here, just for absolute chaos and insanity. Definitely do beware of this album. Next up we got one of the most surprising releases of the year, which is Lil Yachty's album Let's Start Here. Now when I heard he was dropping, I wasn't too excited, but then I saw what everyone was talking about, and then I listened to the album. It's a neo-psych and psychedelic rock album. Yeah, I know. Now there definitely is a lot of overhype for this album. I don't think it's one of the best of the year. I mean, it's a great album for sure, but not one of the best. But Yachty diving into this genre and doing it pretty well, and honestly better than majority of people could do. It's basically Yachty's Igor, but instead of a soul album, it's a neo-psych and psych rock album. It has great instrumentation and fun moments in here all across the album. Yachty's performance does get a bit repetitive here on some tracks, but it's not too detrimental, especially the track list being pretty short compared to his previous projects. Yeah, still a super fun album. Will definitely be in my list for one of my favorites at the end of the year. Next up, we got Magic 2 by Nas. And of course, this is a conscious hip-hop / trap album. And just like Black Thought, Nas is nearing 50, and he's hitting a second prime with his recent run with Hit Boy on King's Disease, and of course the previous Magic, King's Disease 3, was pretty high up on my list last year, and King's Disease 2 and Magic 1 was also pretty high up in 2021. Now Magic 2 isn't that special compared to its first part, but it's still just a taste tester for what's to come. Still a great project and definitely one of my favorites of the year. Oh, here we go. Next up we got Maps by Billy Woods. This is an abstract hip-hop album, and it is the second or third collaboration project with Kenny Siegel, with the previous one being the fantastic Hiding Places. Billy Woods has definitely been on one of the most insane runs in the whole past decade so far, and Maps just adds on top of that. It is honestly one of my favorite Billy Woods projects ever. And just last year he dropped Aethiopes, which was a mind-blowing album, and it reached my top 10 for last year. And there's also the insane collaboration work on Arm & Hammer, providing just some of the most cryptic and complex writing of the 2010s, even in the 2020s with Arm & Hammer's Haram. Now Maps might seem like a much more simple album compared to his previous works, but it's also just a lot more enjoyable as well. The immaculate writing is still there and concepts is still in there as well, but the production is so crisp on this album as well. Features fantastic as well too. Will definitely be near the top for me at the end of the year. Next up we got Magdalena Bay's Mini Mix Volume 3. Yes, this is the third project of this series in the Mini Mix mixtape series, and this whole series of mixtapes is pretty great, and Mini Mix Volume 3 is probably one of the better ones here. It's a synth pop / electro pop album with some huge neo-psychedelia and other things in there as well. It builds upon their very great album Mercurial World, which was in my top most favorite albums of 2021, and over time I've only grown to love it even more. So yeah, definitely do check out Mini Mix Volume 3 and also Mercurial World, as they are both great. I'm trying real hard to go through these quick, but sometimes I just end up talking too much about these projects. But anyways, next up we got Full Monolith by Squid. This is a pretty highly anticipated sophomore album for the band, and their very exciting album that dropped in 2021, their debut Bright Green Field, showed us a lot of potential, and some of the best songs of the year were on that project as well. And with their highly anticipated sophomore album, their follow-up, it probably does its job and breaks expectations as well. The way they're able to build upon these instrumentation progressions and just insane performances all around is really great and something to witness. Of course, it's an experimental rock album / an art punk album, and this definitely does lean more into the punk area compared to Bright Green Field, which leaned more into a post-rock area. So that just makes this much more energizing and just insane. And the writing here is much better as well. Can definitely see this one being pretty high up at the end of the year for me. Next up we got Ooh Rappa Yeah by George Clinton, and this album has some of the best catchy walls of sound you'll probably hear this year. The neo-psych / trip hop album with some dream pop and lots of other things in there as well. It's very atmospheric and ethereal, and it just has some insane walls of noise with some fun tracks in there as well. Pretty great project. Next up we got King Gizzard, of course, coming back with their 50,000 albums every year. This time it's Petrodragonic Apocalypse, and I'm not even going to say the whole title because yeah, that's the whole title right there. It's a super heavy progressive metal and thrash metal album, and at this point KGLW has already proven to be like one of the most versatile bands of all time, moving into genre after genre, but this time we get the metal KGLW back, and it's pretty fantastic. It's very dense, complex, and the concept is also very great as well. Super well laid out and very satisfying to uncover as well. Oh, here we go. Next up, we got Danny Brown and JPEG Mafia's Scaring the Hoes and Scaring the Hoes DLC pack as well. I'm including that here too. Yeah, I'ma just say this is my most favorite album of the year so far, and it's probably gonna stay that way. I could talk about this album for hours, and I'm not gonna do that here, but I'll just say Danny Brown and JPEG Mafia are two insane people to do a collab project. These are like the underground experimental hip-hop trailblazers, and both of them coming together for this collab project is just pure insanity. And JPEG Mafia's recent like 10-year or even this recent 5-year run has been one of the best runs ever, and here they are not messing around at all. It is some of the most unhinged produced JPEG tracks ever, and that is crazy to say. It has some of JPEG's best performances ever. Danny Brown's writing on this album is absolute insanity, but the most insane thing that still blows my mind to this day is Peggy produced this whole thing, or almost this whole entire project, on an SP404. If you don't know what that is, just look it up. It is pure insanity. I don't know, with this run and with this project, I have to put JPEG in my top 5 producers, and he's not even finished there because he's a whole triple threat. And this man just came off of an LP, and that album as well has some of the most crazy hip-hop sample flips I've ever heard. Yeah, it'll be tough to beat this one. I do think it's also one of the best albums of the year, if not just straight up the best album of the year. It was a dream collab. We definitely did not deserve this. Next up, we got Space Heavy by King Cruel. It's a neo-psych slow burn album, and it has some post-punk and jazz rock in there as well. And honestly, it has some of the best psychedelic vibes of the year for me. Like, I always say Tame Impala's Currents is like the perfect night album. Well, I would also put Space Heavy in that category as well. It is like a fantastic night album. Next up, we got the highly anticipated sophomore album from Genesis Owusu, and it is Struggler. It's a post-punk / dance punk album with some neo-soul in there as well. Pretty similar to the previous project, Smiling with No Teeth, which got pretty high up in my favorites list in 2021, and I think he did meet expectations here. At the time I'm recording this, it's still a fairly recent album, so I don't know for sure if I can say right now that it is better with Smiling with No Teeth, but it's definitely a great project. Next up, we got Jessie Ware's That Feels Good, and of course it's a disco / dance pop album, and it is a super energetic and bombastic sequel to What's Your Pleasure, which is also a stunning album as well. This sequel definitely is something super fun, super energetic, and just endless amounts of entertainment is performed. Swans, The Beggar. This is for sure one of my most highly anticipated drops that I was hoping for alongside Danny Brown and JPEG Mafia's collab project. Swans is a legendary post-rock band, and this album is a post-rock / experimental rock project, and it builds upon themes of drone and folk as well in this project. This is basically the ultimate Swans album because it almost goes through an entire summary of their discog. The concept is also slightly terrifying in a way. It is so ominous and existential. The Swans universe has just been building upon all of these core themes about life, death, and spirituality, and that was explored a lot more in the whole trilogy in the 2010s with The Seer, To Be Kind, and The Glowing Man. By the way, I do regard that trilogy as the best of all time. Now, The Beggar does its job by fulfilling some of the themes, but also leaving some of it just in a void, because of a lot of this project's central themes and concepts is built around Jira's question with his mortality, and it's just really something to witness here. And one of the tracks here, the 43-minute Behemoth, is basically a continuation of the title track on The Glowing Man, which is one of my most favorite songs of all time. And the way this whole project surrounds and builds upon that is very exciting to see. And if this is how the legendary discography closes, I won't be mad at all. Next up, we got This Is Why by Parannoul. It's a post-punk slash indie rock album with lots of dance punk elements as well. Super catchy, super melodic, and super punchy as well. Definitely one of the greater projects of the year. Next up, we got Slow Tie's Ugly. Slow Tie has been dropping some pretty great projects, and one of them were a part of my list in 2021, was it? I think it was Tyrone. But yeah, here I think he just completely outdid himself. It has some of his most passionate and angry performances ever, and it has a whole post-punk theme going for it as well, and there still is those hip-hop tracks in there too. The production on here is also pretty great, and at moments it is stunning too. The contents and the lyrical subjects are sometimes jaw-dropping on this project. It's a truly manic and raw album. Post-punk Slow Tie is definitely something I didn't expect to need in 2023. And lastly, for now, we have Navy Blues Ways of Knowing. It's a conscious hip-hop slash jazz rap album with some neo-soul and chipmunk soul as well. It's honestly backed up by some of the best production he's been on in a while. It's super introspective and conscious, and it doesn't stop staying poetic as well. For sure, one of my favorites. And that pretty much does it for now. There are a couple projects on here that I could talk about more, but I am reaching the 20-minute mark already. But for the end of the year, we'll do the whole behemoth video of going through most of my favorite projects, maybe a top 70. But yeah, let me know what your favorite projects of the year were so far down below. Come join me in my Discord and talk about these projects as well. We definitely do need more music heads in the Discord. But yeah, that's it. It's been John Boogle, and see ya.